obviously you know our CEO, Keirsten Sires, you coached her. So
Yep.
she walked onto your team during her time at Skidmore. And of course, like any walk-on does, I'm sure she had to prove herself to you. And you obviously saw some qualities in her that really made you want to give her a shot. And what are the top qualities that you look for in a Skidmore soccer player when you're looking at recruits? What do you want to see in them, and how much weight do you put on qualities such as coachability versus their raw talent?
Yeah, those are great questions. So I think, when I'm answering this question, I get it a lot from prospects. It comes down to like 3 to 4 things. And so I can break that into categories for you. So essentially, first and foremost, we're looking at, if we're at the field and we're watching a player, which is how a lot of these interactions start. We're looking at athleticism, right? Like generally, are you a good athlete? Do you have the qualities that it would take to sort of compete at the college level? So are you fast enough? Are you strong enough? Are you agile enough? Do you have sort of that general sense of athletic ability? Okay, so that's kind of an easy one for us to notice right away. We can probably show up to a field and say, okay, this one does, this one not as much, this one, that's what we're looking for. Different qualities, as far as athletic ability that we're sort of aiming for. And then we start to look at, soccer specific stuff. So we call that sort of the technical piece, and that might be similar to riding. Like, what do your technical skills look like, right? So what is your capability on and off the ball, different strategies that you have employed for your skill development piece. So if you don't have sort of a base level of those things, there's just not enough time to catch you up. Right? So at this level, we kind of hit the ground running. You're going to have to know what you're doing. We're not going to teach it to you from scratch. So I would say athleticism, technical ability, alongside that tactical ability. So we're recruiting position-specific players most of the time, or at least players that have a little versatility because they have some type of soccer IQ, a knowledge of the game. They know sort of how to transition from one position to the next, or what to do in their specific space. Again, that's stuff that we can teach and we develop further as you get here, because our system is going to be a little bit different than how every player has probably grown up, or there's some similarities. We've got to figure out what that is to mesh it all together. But a general knowledge of soccer tendencies is going to be important. So reiterate, technical ability, tactical ability, athleticism. And then you kind of touched upon that last piece, that coachability factor. And so we call that character in our, program. It's different. We're looking for different character traits. Not only are you sort of XYZ soccer player, but probably equal weight. And especially as we kind of go through this timeline now, what kind of human are you, right? Are you coming to our program being a great teammate? Do you have coachability factor? Are you willing to put the team in front of yourself? Those kind of different things we're looking for. Just demeanor, if kids are sitting in front of us and, they say certain things, we're kind of looking at how they interact with their parents, how they interact with their club coaches, how they interact with their team. I've been really excited about a player based on how they answer questions and just their energy in my office. And I've also been really unexcited about players based on how they've treated a parent sitting next to them. So all that kind of makes a big difference in our process for sure.
Yeah, we'll touch a little more on parents and the recruiting process later. I have a question about that. But, I kind of want to add on to that first question a little bit more about the recruitment process. Mm-hmm. How and when should a high school athlete start their recruitment process if they want to play for Skidmore or a similar school?
Yeah, sure. So speaking Skidmore specific, I would say as early as sophomore year, we are sort of seeing a trend of freshmen reaching out to us. I'm sorry about that. Off news feeds all day. But anyway, so yeah, we are seeing a little bit of trend of freshmen starting to reach out, and that's fine. We do send them some contacts. I'll be completely transparent. We don't spend a lot of time, if any, really on the freshman class because they're so far out for us.
It's too soon to tell what kind of player they are that early. And
there's just so much time in between that. And unfortunately, Division IIIs don't have that luxury of spending all that time through all those classes because we don't have a big, recruiting staff. Usually it's a head coach and an assistant if we're lucky. So for us, like I've got a part-time assistant, and so she's not with me full-time all the time. So a lot of it is falling on me as head coach to kind of filter through and put my time where it is most effective and most useful. So I think for us, the earliest I would say is you're going to get the most interaction from us is sometime during your sophomore year to start that process of, hey, here's who I am, where I'm from, here's who I play for, send us some information on showcases you might attending, be in tune to our communication back as to when we might be having ID clinics, come to some of those, so we start to get an initial feel. that's a good idea for us to just have a familiarity with names and who's interested, and that keeps us more in touch as you move into your junior year. So junior year is big time. If we don't hear from somebody in their junior year, they're probably going to fall through the cracks as closer and closer they get to their senior year. It's just really hard to make that pivot really quick with them. Not to say it can't happen, but it's just, most of our attention falls into the junior year class. That's what we're out on the road watching majority of the time as juniors, and who we're having the most contact with. So hope that answers.
Of course.
Question. Okay.
And you mentioned showcases. So my next question kind of relates to that. What is the best way for a high school player to get on your radar? What are the important showcases that they should be attending, and just any other tips for how to get seen by coaches?
Sure. I think there's a ton. You could be at a soccer showcase every weekend of the year if you wanted to. So financially, we can't do that, right? We've got a recruiting budget that's very specific, and so we try to make the most of those dollars. And so for us, we're trying to hit at least 3 big showcases and then 2 to 3 smaller showcases or regional showcases throughout the year. So for us, typically it's Castle down in North Carolina. Typically it's Disney in January now, since they moved the dates. Jefferson Cup, Las Vegas Invitational, player showcase, PDA, and then usually a Needham, GPS, and maybe some smaller ones like NEFC, Scorpion Bowl, stuff like that in March. So there is sort of a gamut of big to small there, just so that we try to spread our wings a little bit to see kids that might not be playing for teams that are going to big showcases, but can hit that second tier as well.
So, it's good that you go to so many, because all these kids, they're going all over. They have all these opportunities to really get seen, and that's a great thing.
Yeah. And I think, a couple of things there, we're out at the showcases. We're either identifying students that we're watching and saying, okay, this kid is a great player, let's get in touch with them. By and large, we're watching players that have contacted us and said, hey, I have an interest in Skidmore. Here's where I'm going to be.
Does it ever happen that you maybe get contacted by one player and you go to see them and you just see someone else and you're like, oh, they'd be really great?
Of course. Of course. Yeah, I mean, that's sort of the goal, right? You don't want to show up at a field, spend 45 minutes to an hour or longer watching just one player. So you're there, and that player may or may not play the whole time. So, while they're in, you're paying particular attention to them, but also some peripheral things happening, like, oh, wow, that player's got a lot of speed, or that player's great on the ball, or, and you're noticing different stuff about them as well.
So obviously Skidmore is a very academically rigorous school, and as well as being a Division III school, so they don't give athletic scholarships. So keeping this in mind, how much does athletics help in the college admissions process, keeping in mind that they don't offer scholarships? And for those who do need some sort of assistance, what does Skidmore offer to the athletes, if anything?
Yeah, so as far as scholarships for athletes, there's nothing, because we're Division III, you mentioned that, right? So there's nothing tailored to athletics in scholarship form, because that's an NCAA violation. So that being said, I think a school like us, where we've got limited merit aid, we do have some merit money in music, science, math. That's an avenue that students can look at, but by and large, if a student needs some type of aid, it's going to be in the form of financial aid. So that's, we're a tuition-driven school, so if you qualify for financial aid, it's all need-based. That could be really helpful for a student with finances in that regard. There's some different grants and things like that the financial aid office can offer in that regard, but athletics has 0% ability to influence any of that. So that takes us out of the equation altogether. The best that we can do is say, okay, have you filled out the financial aid calculator? Great, you've got questions, call this number in the financial aid office. That's kind of how we help facilitate some of that stuff. It's just getting information to the players that are sort of considering Skidmore and understanding that there's kind of a hefty price tag. As far as admissions goes, every program has sort of a different level of support that they can provide prospective students based on roster size, based on any given year, really, too. So what that really means is, you get tagged. You get tagged as, a riding recruit. You get tagged as a soccer recruit. And all that says to admissions is there's an interest in this student, some other level other than they're interested in Skidmore. So it says, okay, now there's a program on campus that's interested in bringing the student here, understanding that Skidmore allocates financial resources to find students, right, to attend. So that's sort of that kind of twofold interaction with admissions. Okay, you've done the work to help find these students. Let's see if they're a good fit academically. I can't just bring students who sort of kind of fit the mold of a Skidmore kid. Like they've still got to look like a Skidmore applicant. They've got to fit all the academic requirements. But I guess where that help comes in is if you have two applicants that look exactly the same on paper, that, you know, my support might help them in that regard. So that kind of helps simplify the way that translates.
Like any applicant, I guess, where if you have certain things on your resume, it might kind of help you out a little more.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
So you talked about this a little bit earlier with kind of some athletes having that flexibility of being able to play different positions and that being something that you might look for when recruiting. Mm-hmm. Is playing different positions something that athletes should be mentally prepared to do in college, or does it usually happen that they continue to play the position they've been playing throughout high school?
Yeah, I can feel probably half of my team just giggling a little bit in the background as I'm answering this question. But yeah, I think if you were to ask any of my players, they would say, be ready to play anything that coach wants you to play. And I think that's something that players should be ready and willing to do. You know, I think in our recruiting process, we are looking for that sort of diverse player that has seen different parts of the field, just because when you get to a college program, you know, there are going to be older players than you as a prospective student, right? So when you enter your freshman year, and it happened even to me during my time of playing, you know, you enter freshman year and you've grown up as a, you know, a midfielder, but the team already has 6 midfielders and they're all older than you and they've got a little bit more experience than you, but you're still a great player and you've got all these other assets. And coach says, hey, you want to try forward, you've got to be open-minded to that opportunity or be prepared to not get much time on the field. So I think if players are open to that, they're going to have a lot more success earlier in their career as compared to kind of being locked into, I'm only a defender, I'm only a midfielder. You know, the exception to that probably being a goalkeeper, you know, who's a really specific position on the field. That's kind of where we don't expect our goalkeepers to be that versatile. We want them to be really good at goalkeeping. So that's kind of the one exception on our field.
Is it rare or is it common that you find an athlete that is really like strong in being able to adapt to different positions quickly? Do you find that most of your athletes are able to do that, or do you find that it's a little more rare to have an athlete that can do that?
I don't think it's rare. I think it's becoming, you know, I think we're starting to see a trend of players that are capable in a lot more positions. You know, I think that word is starting to spread a little bit, that the more useful you are in different positions, the more recruitable you are. And so I think we are starting to see that, which is really, really nice. It makes it a lot easier when students get here. And we try to be transparent through that in the process, okay? I think a good question for prospectives to ask any coach is, okay, where do you see me playing for your team? And I love when prospects ask me that, and I say, okay, I've seen you play in the midfields, and we could definitely use you there, but right away, I might also see you as an outside forward because we like your speed and we like your ability to deliver a ball. So I think that's a really good question for students to ask.
I think it's important no matter what sport or position within that sport you play to ask that kind of question, like, where do I fit on this team throughout the recruiting process? Because, you know, if you play a certain position, you know for a fact that the school's not looking for someone who plays that position. Even if it's your dream school, like, you're probably going to want to pursue other options, because if you just don't fit on that team, it's like, you know, like if I'm a novice rider and I'm looking to apply to Skidmore and they're like, we have 15 novice riders, we don't need more, I'm going to look elsewhere because I know I just probably won't have a place on that team.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, that's a good perspective to have.
I'm sure you kind of encourage your recruits to keep their options open.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's we try to do our due diligence with, you know, if a prospect just isn't going to fit with our either recruiting scheme or, you know, at some point along the line, we figure out that they're just not a good fit for the program, letting them know, you know, so it's okay, if we're just going in another direction with our recruiting, we don't see you sort of having a spot here. And if there's questions from there, we can get into more specifics about what they would need in order to be a part of things. And not to discourage anybody from applying to Skidmore, because I think Skidmore on its own is a great application spot. You know, you should apply just because you love the school. But from there, I'm able to have more honest conversations about, okay, if it's not us, then how can I help you find a school that might be a better fit for you? Or I know is looking for programs. Yeah, because
a school that would be a good option for them if you say to them, you're not really necessarily the fit for Skidmore, but do you provide them a little bit of that assistance to point them in the right direction?
If they're looking for it, I think that's the first question. I don't want to impose our will on anybody or kind of guide anybody's, search process. But, we often host recruiting clinics and prospect ID clinics. So, students will come in, we'll see them play for a day, and we'll have some good feedback on them. And if they're not a good fit for us, we can say, okay, but, if you are looking somewhere else and we have seen you play, and that coach that you're talking to hasn't seen you play, tell them to reach out to us, because we're willing to give an eval to that coach and kind of, speak about you if you're interested. That happens for us as well. I get plenty of feedback from other colleges that have seen players play that I haven't, and they're, kind of able to be a little transparent about that as well, which is good.
So when you're recruiting, if you could pick 3 ingredients to just make your perfect Skidmore women's soccer recruit, what would you put in there?
What would I put in there? Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, we've been trying to create this formula for over a decade now, so this is good. I think top of our list right now as we're thinking about, where our team culture is and things that are important for us as a program. We're really character driven right now, so that's guiding everything that we're doing. So, I think, like I said, all the other intangibles of, being a good technical player, a good tactical player, above all, as long as those other pieces match together, I think it's, you've got to fit the mold of the type of student that we're looking for character-wise, which means a whole bunch of things, but in a nutshell, it means team first, it means driven, it means committed, it means willing to sacrifice, kind of some of those smaller things so that you can get back to the program, and, the ability to work hard, so I don't think you get through any of that without sort of a drive to do the right things. So that's definitely number one. So we're looking for certain character traits. And then I think top 3 things, I think beyond that, good student. Obviously, you've got to be a really driven student, because we've got a pretty solid team reputation. And we've been chasing the riding coattails for a while, trying to catch you guys, but you're just above us all the time. But, we come in number 2 pretty frequently, which is awesome. So I think that's a huge part of it. Finding student athletes who are motivated and driven in the classroom is sort of an ideal candidate for us.
So Skidmore does have that Thoroughbred Society program, because it really is like a great reward system to motivate the athletes to stay on track. Absolutely.
And then I think, third to that is the athletic stuff. I think, if you go character, academics, and then the athletic stuff, and those are it's pretty strong 3 that we're looking for.
All right. So now a little bit about official visits. Athletes come, you're interested in them, they're coming on an official visit. Mm-hmm. What are the big red flags that you might look for when an athlete is coming for an official visit?
Good question. A simple red flag, I think, for us is, for me, when I'm talking to a prospective student, is this is going to sound maybe a little funny, but if I'm talking to a student who has the incapability of smiling at some point in their visit, then I think that's a red flag to me. That signals a lot of things to me. It signals that they're maybe not quite mature enough to join our program, and the environment, or there's just something about their visit that's really not meshing with them. And so twofold, like we're looking to force Skidmore on anybody, but also we're looking for you to maybe open yourself up to that opportunity to have good conversations and a good experience while you're here. So I need to find out why that's the case. Why aren't you sitting here or stone cold in front of me? Is it nerves? That's fine, right? But is it something else going on, and what is that?
I would say you can kind of tell if it's nerves or if it's something else. I'm sure by now you probably had so many athletes come through that
it is. I think, we use the team in a lot of these scenarios. After a student has an official visit and has spent time with them, that's the bulk of my, that make sure that their visit sets up the way that they want it to be. They attend classes they want to go to, they get an admissions interview if they want it, they have to spend time in the areas that they're interested in. And then I break that down with our team. You can tell a lot from that student host who's had them overnight, and I kind of grill them afterwards. Okay, look, how did it go? Was she engaged? Was she disengaged? Was she on her phone the whole time? And those are some things that come up after the facts from players, like, yeah, she just really didn't seem interested in what we had going on, and she asked some like really unengaging questions, or she didn't ask any questions at all. I think those are red flags to us as somebody who's not that interested and they're just filling time with a visit. So,
would you say that you learn a lot from the team members who host them for overnights or even day trips? I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's beautiful. I find, our students really want to talk about whoever they spent time with, because they're really invested in who we're bringing to the team, right? And they're easy to say to me, thumbs up, thumbs down. If you were to rate this prospect, is it a go, or is it a, hey, let's maybe not pursue this anymore? Because it's important to us that we find a good fit for both. What I'm seeing on the field and what I'm seeing in my office sometimes is different than what some of our students are experiencing behind the scenes. And so we have to make sure those two experiences match up, so we get the right fit.
So obviously it is important for parents to be involved in the college process, and you want them to be interested. But on a little bit of the flip side, can parents that are overly rambunctious or overly involved make you stop recruiting an athlete?
Yes. Short story, yes. I think I haven't had this experience as of late. So that's been really positive. I think parents being involved in the process, I think this generation of player is so different than it was 10 to 15 years ago. I think, and all for the good, I think parents are more involved in college processes. When I was going to college, my parents the only thing they did was go with me in the car, and then I sat in the car, and I had those conversations on my own, because that was just how things were kind of done.
Parents are becoming more involved.
Yeah, and so now parents are more welcome in those spaces. For one, coaches are saying, yes, come in, let's meet your family, let's talk about, all the questions that you have as a mom or a dad or a guardian. And I think that's good, actually gives us a little bit deeper insight into who that player might be by meeting parents. So I welcome that opportunity. I like that opportunity to meet people's families, just to have an understanding of where they're coming from, a little bit about their personalities. Apples don't fall far usually, so you can see a little bit from parents. But I've only really probably had a handful of experiences where a parent and a player has come in, and the parent has kind of negatively influenced that player's visit. And usually what that looks like is, a parent or guardian who is just dominant in that setting. So they're not sort of letting, if I ask a question to the prospective, and usually I'm very clear about who I'm talking to. If you're the parent and you're the player, I'm going to turn and face you and I'm asking you the question, and I want to hear your answer, and then I'll pass the question to the parent and say, how does this thrive with you as well? Like, how do you feel about that? And a situation where a parent takes over and doesn't allow that voice to happen, I'm like, oh geez, okay, all right, well, now we've got to backtrack and figure out how the player feels about this, because that's who we're living with, right? Like, I'm not living with mom and dad and whoever else for the next 4 years. I'm living with the player.
Is there kind of a way to combat that during recruitment visits and such, when parents are being very aggressive and you can tell that the kid really wants to answer the questions but they're just not getting the chance to, versus a kid who's really quiet and is just like kind of letting their parents take over?
Yeah, I think there is a difference. You can tell the difference between shyness and sort of being overrun. And so my tactic during that is really just to redirect all questions to a player. So it's in very specific ways that only the player can answer. You're calling your names. Okay, Daphne, how do you feel about XYZ? And so that really directs it to you. And then, involving, there's some gamesmanship with trying to involve parents so they feel included, because some are just really chatty and they want to brag about their player, and they want to tell you all the things that maybe the player is too shy or too humble to talk about, which is good and bad. But yeah, there's definitely strategies to get players involved and talk a bit more.
So this generation loves social media. It's just a fact.
Yep.
So when you're recruiting, do you look at the social media of the athletes that you're considering?
I would say by and large, no, we don't. Until the sort of final phases. If we're getting through the initial phases of getting to know the player, understanding all their background, their athletic stuff, their academic stuff, and at that point, usually, to be honest, what happens with you is that usually happens during a visit of some kind. Our team sort of polices that, and it's not something I've tasked them with, but I think because your generation is very in touch.
Sure, they're all over it. Like,
yeah, they are. It's very easy to find people on social media, and if there's something that comes up,
I mean, I know the girls on my team are already like, because we don't actually recruit. We're all walk-ons. We all try out and we get here, but
Right.
we do know the girls that are coming here.
Yep.
And we know the girls that have visited because Belinda will put us in contact with a lot of them, and like we'll go on their Instagram and we see what's up with them. And if we see something, we say something to Belinda.
Yeah.
And we're like, hey, like I know you're gonna give her a fair chance to try out, but we just want to make
Just
you
heads up.
And like, we've seen a couple of girls already who are coming in the fall, and they already have Skidmore equestrian in their Instagram bios. I'm like, you haven't even tried out yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think teams do a good job of policing these types of things, and maybe policing is not the right word, but sort of investigating maybe, whether it's intentionally or unintentionally. But that's exactly how I hear about it too. It's, hey coach, have you seen this? You probably haven't seen it, but just giving you a heads up that this looks a little weird, or we're a little concerned about this, or okay. All right, well, let's see if we can address it with the player. If it's somebody that's coming in, like you're saying, let's see if we can curb their behavior a little bit, or at least get them to, stop what they're doing from now forward. Right? They feel like editing the past, right? But if they, at least from here forward, we can kind of influence how they're doing things in a positive way. Let's do it. But you get several warnings with that stuff until you get the official warning from me during preseason. Shut down your social media to negative activity.
That feeds into my next question that I was going to ask. Have you ever decided not to recruit an athlete based on their social media? Or have you recruited an athlete and then saw something that made you change your mind?
Yeah, great question. I think a really relevant question. I can't say that I have made that decision. I haven't seen anything that's been so negative that it's, I've had to sort of really rethink somebody's acceptance or, piece in the recruiting process because of that. So maybe I'm fortunate, or maybe I've just missed stuff. I don't know. Maybe a bit of both.
So Skidmore's motto is creative thought matters. So obviously it's important for these kids to be creative. And how have you seen these athletes who are going through this really difficult time in the recruitment process with this coronavirus pandemic? How have you seen them be creative and pushing through this and showcasing themselves as athletes when they aren't able to do so in the traditional sense of, having you come to their games because they're not playing?
Yeah, I think this has probably been the most creative recruiting time, to be honest. I think coaches are having to be creative about how they're seeing and interacting with perspectives. And I think, perspectives are being creative in how to engage coaches that are getting inundated with video and highlight films and all these things. So I would say the things that I've seen that have been the most creative, it started sort of with a trend. Players started sending any highlight film that they had that maybe they wouldn't have sent out. Okay, so is it from sophomore year? Is it from high school season? Is it from their whatever last club showcase they were at? All that stuff kind of came through, which is good. And then beyond that, because things kind of came to a halt, right? There's nothing beyond your initial highlight film from the fall. Players started to do training videos. So it was, player, ball, camera, set up. They're doing some ball skills, or they're doing some small drills with a family member, or maybe with their coach, if their coach, if they figured out how to socially distance during that whole process. So we did see more training videos, which is something that we normally only see from goalkeepers, because you get more interaction with a goalkeeper in a training video than during a game. But for field players, that started to become a little bit more, and I'm still sort of seeing it. I just got one today, actually, that was a training video of different things, foot skills and different sort of aspects of our game. But beyond that, I've also received, like I sort of mentioned earlier, like a day in the life video where somebody was learning how to use iMovie and put together sort of a montage of, what does their daily life look like from the time they got up to what they had for breakfast, to what they had for lunch, to how they did their schoolwork, to, we'd throw in some training in the day. So it was like a 13-minute video, and it was sort of a showcase of maybe some family at home too. So it was fun to watch. Now, I wouldn't say I would want to watch, 30 of them in a day, because I just don't have that kind of time, but it was entertaining, and it was a way for us to engage in a different way. And so I think, that was something that I would say probably 10 people have sent me stuff like that.
Did you watch them all?
I watched them all. I think if you're willing to put it together, I'll do you the favor and watch it. It might take me some time to get through them all, but yeah, they've been interesting. And like I said, some are higher quality than others. So there's, like I said, I can go one of two ways. It'd be in your favor, or sort of like, oh, geez, this doesn't look the greatest. But I think beyond that, the video stuff has been better than it has been. And also Xoom calls, right? So like I'm meeting more prospects over Zoom and FaceTime than ever before. This wasn't really a way to recruit. Like, come to campus, let's sit, let's talk, let's talk on the phone. But this has sort of opened up a different style of face-to-face time, which I'm in favor of. I think people are more comfortable in some respects than sitting in my office and having these first conversations, because you're in your comfort zone, right? Like it's something about this screen makes people, kind of participate a little bit better in some respects, worse in some others, but, more regularly in some regards with recruits. So
I was going to ask you if the day in the life videos kind of maybe are an effective way of you getting to know an athlete when you can't meet with them on campus, but I kind of didn't consider the idea of jumping on a Zoom call, which of course I should have. So do you think that between the combination of those two, you're still able to get an effective idea of what this athlete is like and what they're going to bring to your team?
Yeah, I think the day in the life videos give us a little insight into personality. I think, and bravery, right? Like if a player is willing to be brave enough to kind of showcase themselves in that way, I think great. That's kind of a Skidmore kid for you, if I'm being honest. Somebody that's willing to sort of step out of the norm and be able to live in that way, a little bit outside the box. So that sort of speaks to some of that. I said, okay, we have a potential Skidmore kid on our hand. Let's really look into this and see what's up. And so, yeah, I think we've done probably more work with calling club coaches than we have in the past to really find out, because video is good, but it's only good to a certain point, right? So I want to make sure that we're really getting, because I'm only seeing what you're showing me. So you're picking the clips and you're deciding what I'm getting to watch. And so obviously, I've seen enough highlight films to know that you're not perfect in all aspects of your game, right? So I'm waiting to see the other side of that too. But club coach has been really helpful. High school coaches have been really helpful, either emailing or jumping on calls. And I think because everybody's home, we've got a little bit extra time to engage in those conversations. So that's really ramped up in that direction as well. So, hey, we're noticing a player on film. We like them. Okay, let's follow up with one of their coaches, see if it's true and how this plays out day to day. And then, let's revisit with another call with the player. Yeah.
And when you do get on these Zoom calls with these players, do parents get on with you? Have you kind of been taking advantage of the ability to really just get on with the player and have them be themselves and not have parents involved?
I think a little bit of both. So work days are hard, right? Like everybody's home, but everybody's also working. So I think if players can have their parents join, great. And if their parents are interested in joining, great. If not, I've had, a mix of conversations with just me and the player, just me and the parents, and a combination of the both. So I think it's all good. I think it really depends on people's schedules. I think it is helpful. Like if I were to prefer it, I would prefer parents to be on the call, because I do think that there's stuff that comes up with parents that players just don't think about, especially when it comes to finances and tuition. Players go, I think we're applying for financial aid. I have to ask my parents. Whereas when a parent's on the call, they're going, yeah, we're going to apply for financial aid, or, hey, we might not qualify for financial aid. What does that look like? Things like that. So.
And have you had any of your current team members hopping on Zoom calls with potential athletes to still get that idea of whether they mesh with the team?
Yeah, we've had, of course, there's some new legislation out now, so we've got to make some tweaks, but the Zoom call thing is sort of, it's, you and the coaching staff is allowed, but you can't throw more than just because of privacy laws, you can't throw players onto the mix with recruits quite yet. Yeah, which just came down the pipeline in end April, early part of May. But new territory, right? So all of a sudden, all these rules kind of get reinterpreted. But yeah, we've had it with a couple kids who were 2020s graduates. That one player who was, we'd had sort of been recruiting, we're planning to see in the spring, so a little bit late in her process, but because of all this stuff getting shut down, we've been only kind of recruited her off of highlight films and coach recommendations. And she fit a position that we really need. So that was sort of our, okay, well, let's take a chance on this player, but let's do our due diligence. Let's throw her in the mix with some, of our leaders on the team. And that way she can ask questions about life at Skidmore, and they can sort of ask questions about her, and we can get a good feel. And so that was helpful, I think, for both sides, and end up actually influencing her decision to say yes to Skidmore. So all's well that ends well, right?
So if there's one skill that Skidmore soccer athletes coming onto the team need to work on, what would you say that is most common?
I would say every new player that we get to the program, that probably the biggest thing they have to learn right away is speed of play. They're used to having time and space to do all the things, figure out what their answer is with what they're going to do with the ball. And I think college soccer is just bigger, faster, stronger. So speed of play is always the number one issue with new players to the team, just because they haven't seen that level quite yet. The best club team players are still having to work on speed of play, because now you're surrounded by the best club team players from all the surrounding areas. So you throw all that mix in, and you end up getting probably at least a week into preseason. You're saying, okay, come on, faster. You've got to play faster, make your decisions faster. Don't be afraid to take risks, things like that. So I think that's probably our number one.
Does it ever happen that in preseason you see someone that really just isn't adjusting to it and you have to change your mind on them, or do you usually give them the chance throughout the season to evolve and progress?
Yeah, good question. I think, we've had, moments where we thought it was going to be a good fit and it didn't work out. I would say by and large, we haven't had to make the decision to remove that player. Now it might become more of a likelihood in the future as our team continues to get that much better. So I do foresee that in the future. Hopefully we're doing our homework on the front end to know and kind of project, where every player that's coming in is going to fall. But yeah, we definitely have times where we're like, okay, this player is going to need a lot of work, and they're going to have to really kind of understand their role moving forward. And we try to, talk to them along the way to get them to understand, okay, here's where you're at, here's where we need to go, and this is what this might look like for you. If you're willing to put the time and energy and effort in, then we'll work with you along the way. If this is going to be something that's going to be continually frustrating for you and it's going to create problems with the team, this probably isn't a good fit for you. And so we have that conversation.
And I'm sure you've seen enough players come through your program that now you kind of have an idea of, when you see a player going through preseason, they might be struggling a little bit, but I'm sure that you kind of have an idea of who has the potential to get there and who doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely. There's different markers along the way that you can kind of see people achieving. And when you see a player that's not really achieving those same markers, that's when it's time for a meeting and a quick catch on the field, or come into the office and let's chat about what's going on for you. Because sometimes it's just nerves. It's a lot, right? Freshman year, you're moving in, you've got all these people that already know each other. Plus you're navigating the dorm and the dining hall and roommate and all these different things. So we try to leave a little breather room for that adjustment time period. And then if it just never quite catches, I haven't had that experience where just something never quite clicks. We've been fortunate in that way, but it does, some people take a little bit longer to sort of show themselves and who they are as a player. And if we do our part as coaches and as teammates, then usually we can encourage that player out of their comfort zone. So
we spoke a little bit earlier about getting into Skidmore, admissions, like the academic rigors of being the type of student that Skidmore looks for.
Mm-hmm.
When applying to Skidmore, what GPA and ACT or SAT, whichever standardized test they take, should athletes be striving for if they want to go to Skidmore, if they want to play at Skidmore?
Yeah. Well, this is going to be interesting moving forward with COVID-19 stuff. So that's what we're navigating now is what do junior year transcripts look like because of pass fail classes. And so we're sort of in and out of meetings with admissions about what that will look like. But generally speaking, a student that's got a 3.5 GPA or higher is a really good look for Skidmore. Now, all that depends on what kind of classes you're taking, what type of school you're attending, the rigor of your course schedule. So if you're getting a 3.5, taking the bare minimum level of classes, Skidmore's going to go, okay. Great, but if you're getting a 3.5 or greater, taking AP classes, taking honors classes, taking kind of upper level stuff, then that's going to catch Skidmore's attention a lot quicker. So they're looking at that kind of thing, and then test scores, because we are a test optional school. You don't have to submit your SAT and ACT scores. That's not a priority for Skidmore, and I would assume, based on all this stuff moving forward, you're going to see a lot of schools kind of move to that model, just because tests have been canceled and students aren't going to have access to.
We're already starting to move towards that, and I'm sure you'll see even more of an increase in schools doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Obviously, an increase in the number of students who choose to not testing now.
Yeah, but generally speaking, I would say 28 or higher on the ACT. Now, if we're thinking 2 sections of the SAT, I would say each section 650 or higher, kind of 650 being the minimum, sort of goal to shoot for.
Okay. So now getting back to a little bit more team-specific things, Keirsten has mentioned that you're a very fair and hardworking coach, and you really care about your players. Can you describe your coaching style and coaching philosophy a bit?
Oh, well, that's an awesome compliment. So thanks for that, Keir. My coaching style, yeah, I think, I grew up with an education background. That's what I went to school for. So that's my mindset when it comes to coaching. And that's the type of staff that I try to hire, those that have kind of a growth mindset as compared to players aren't getting it right. We're going to scream and yell at them at the sideline. That's never my style. It's never going to be my style. I love X's and O's. I love walking players through if this then that kind of stuff. We're constantly learning and how to evolve as a staff. So, every year we try to get ourselves through different certifications, through different, kind of coaching licensures. And so new model that we're really excited to rolling out next year is just all about problem solving, decision making. So I think that's kind of where we're headed. That's the next evolution of our program, is trying to figure out how to, make our players meet the college motto, right? Creative thought. Like, how do we solve, the following problems? This is what's in front of you. What do you see? How do we get our players to understand the greater game, and how do they start to problem solve for themselves? Because those are all translatable skills, So I think, that for me is a philosophy coaching wise going forward. But, I think it's all personal relationships. It's the reason that we coach, on our staff. It's a big reason why, I got into doing this as a profession. And so it's, as much as it is about the X's and O's and the win-loss column, okay. And soccer is an awesome sport, don't get me wrong. But most of it, for me, the excitement comes from this. Honestly, it comes from athlete interaction and from understanding who our players are as people, and helping them get wherever they're going to go, and then figuring out when they leave us, what are they doing? Do they still need support? And how do we showcase them and support them, kind of beyond. So.
Yeah, and I feel like that really ties in with what you were saying about the team being so character driven, because those are, like you're saying, your whole philosophy on coaching. Really, it makes sense that you would look for such a character driven teammate and athlete when you are just looking for someone who's going to really fit the mold of what you want for a Skidmore soccer player.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is the question that I've been waiting to ask.
Oh boy.
I've been told that Tara was quite the cheerleader back when Keirsten was a member of your team. I've heard all about the megaphone.
Oh, geez.
And yep. I want to hear a little bit more about that. I want to hear some funny Tara stories.
Well, Tara might go down as the program's biggest fan who didn't know what she was doing. But I think, Tara at any level, she's got probably the biggest heart of anyone you've ever met. And so she kind of came to the stands with that kind of energy. And I think, Keirsten joined our team her sophomore year, I think. Maybe it was a junior. I can't remember. But anyway, kind of really having to transition from tennis to soccer. So Tara and Bob both, sort of grew up tennis worlds, right? Watching Keir play tennis and really understanding tennis and really having an idea of what tennis looks like, to soccer, which was sort of something that Keir did, but not at as competitive level as tennis. And so Tara had no idea how to sort of join that as a spectator, but she wanted to throw herself at it in classic style. And so brought with her just energy. That was awesome. And she used to show up at the bus with the megaphone, just shouting to the team, just all these positive things and kind of making them laugh. And, it was hysterical. And she would circle the bus with the sirens and the honking of the car and show up at the field, just yelling all this stuff. And it was phenomenal. It created a really, kind of funny, low-key environment for the players to kind of walk into, which was really cool that year. I mean, we had a lot of success that year too, so it was fun for her to be a part of. And she had this phrase, it was sort of developed with another fan, but it was, this phrase that was like, "You're welcome." So they would scream every time we scored, they would yell, "You're welcome," because it was, part of their effort urging us to score more goals.
That to me.
It was so funny, and the kids thought it was funny too, and it just became kind of something that we expected at every game. What's
the absolute funniest thing you ever do on the sidelines at a game?
Oh geez, I'm trying to think if it was her. She showed up with like a box full of foam fingers and like horse heads for people to wear, and t-shirts and hats that said "You're welcome" on it. I wish I had one of them. I probably do somewhere in our storage. That was probably the funniest thing. And fat heads for the seniors that year. She had blown up these giant heads for the seniors in the stands. And so she's, got all this stuff going on, and it was absolutely hysterical. But yeah.
The professional Skidmore women's soccer cheerleader.
Yeah, we haven't had anybody like her since, and it's just been, she's just a phenomenal support for us during the years that Keir was on the team and beyond. Just anything that the program needed, she just jumped on and tried to help out, which was you can't find that kind of support just anywhere. It was really, really special.
That's the kind of parent that really shows up like that at the games.
Yeah, and just super supportive to all the kids on the team. She didn't really know what she was supposed to be cheering for specifically, but but she was there, and she was loud, and she was proud about it, and she was really pro Skidmore, and just really kind of put some energy into it. I think I wish I could remember who. Keirsten scored a goal, and it was a pretty big deal during the match, and she had been paying attention to something else, and now everyone's cheering about the goal, and she goes, "We scored! No, who scored?" And everyone's like, "Keirsten!" And she was like, "Oh my God! Wait, my Keirsten!" And so I'm like, "Yes, you're Keirsten." Oh man, that's the story that gets told to me anyway from the stands, but it's pretty funny.
So you might not have an answer to this question, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. If you could coach any sport besides soccer, what would it be and why?
Oh. That's a good question. Well, I always joke with our volleyball coach that I'm gonna kind of practice someday and coach her sport, and she's gonna come coach mine, but mostly just as a gentle teasing to our volleyball coach because she's so funny. But I think probably basketball, because I think soccer and basketball are the most easily related sports, just different types of strategy and tactics. And I loved playing basketball growing up. I just still relive. If I could relive the basketball glory days, I would 100% do that. So, and every soccer player thinks that they can play basketball. I don't know what it is about us. We just really think that we have those skills.
Yeah, basketball was never in the cards for me. I think I'm a little too short to be successful there, but
I hear you. I'm 5'3". I mean, there's no reason, right? But I played it in high school. I loved it. But yeah, that's probably the sport I would pick.
So outside of Tara, because obviously no one can ever compare to her with the megaphone, what are some other funny things that you've seen parents do during games?
I think, what else have we seen? We've seen Well, we've seen the wave a few times, it's a small crowd, but it's a mighty crowd. We've seen chants, we've seen, everything from face paint to t-shirts to different types of paraphernalia that show up, pom-poms and, and things like that. I'm trying to think of what else has been in the stands. Banners, plenty of banners. Yeah, that's probably most of it inspired by Tara. It's just been cycled down.
And since Skidmore started this whole stable game initiative, which I think is great to encourage athlete support, have you seen any funny fan displays from fellow Skidmore athletes that are showing up to the games?
I don't know that I noticed it this time around because we were a night game, and I think people were sort of itching to get back to their academic work, which is understandable. But I think one of the funniest student displays that we saw was actually probably during Keirsten's time on the team. There was a close relationship with the hockey team at that point in time, and so during one of the half times that we had at home, the hockey guys dressed up as soccer players and like body paint, and one of them painted themselves like a ball, and they did a little like reenactment on the field. It was hilarious. So I think that was probably the biggest engagement as far as students following the team and giving support that we've seen. Yeah, it was nice and it was hilarious.
I think that's an awesome thing that Skidmore is doing with the stable games. It's really nice to kind of encourage that participation of other athletes.
Yeah, and probably the most people you guys have seen down in the barn at any given time, right?
We actually didn't get too many because it's hard with us because we're really spread out throughout the day. But we had a few of the soccer and field hockey girls come, so we really appreciated that.
Awesome.
And, it's sad for the spring sports that never got to showcase there.
Yeah, I think it's a trend that'll stick because I think so many, there's so much good feedback from you guys, positive feedback from athletes saying that they really love that. It's the only way, right? Like if we can't show up for each other, then how do we expect campus to kind of come down and watch us? So good.
All right. Well, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for doing this.
Hey, you're welcome. I'm glad, and hope your internship goes well with these guys because they're awesome folks to work with. And if you need anything else, don't be shy about reaching out.
All right. Thank you so much again for your time. Have a great
day, Daphne. You too.